Einige werden mitbekommen haben, dass jetzt gerade zuletzt Boris Johnson und Dominic Cummings immer mehr in der Kritik standen. Die Frage ist, wie man mit sowas umgeht. Wie verhalte ich mich gegenüber den Medien? Wie gebe ich Statements ab? Und vor allen Dingen, das ist natürlich auch im Interesse der meisten Leute, die in der Wirtschaft tätig sind, wie sehe ich selber so dabei aus, dass ich nicht komplett irgendetwas falsch mache? Ich habe mich hier direkt mit Alan Stevens zusammengesetzt. Alan Stevens ist Experte, internationaler Experte in dem Bereich von Medien und Kommunikation. Er selber wohnt in London. Ich kenne ihn seit vielen Jahren und er ist unter anderem bekannt von TV-Stationen wie unter anderem BBC, Sky News. Also er tritt regelmäßig selbst auch in den Medien auf. Das Interview haben wir in englischer Sprache geführt. Ich wünsche viel Spaß. Crisis, Dominic Cummings, Boris Johnson. Names you read recently in the news, and you may or may not have liked what they said. The question is, did they do it right, or was their performance rather poor? Of course, I could give you my opinion on that, but we should ask someone who not only is from the UK, but also is an international media expert. I am very proud to have Alan Stevens as a guest, known from BBC, Sky News, and many other international news outlets. Hello and welcome, Alan Stevens.
Thank you very much, Niels. Pleasure to be with you.
Thank you very much for taking the time. Let's start with the first statement. Just recently, we had Boris Johnson coming out and talking about what Dominic Cummings has done. Has he broken the rules and the guidelines? Hasn't he broken the rules? Well, but Boris Johnson made a quite longer statement, but only during the first minutes talked about what Dominic Cummings did or hasn't done. What do you think? Let's stick to Boris Johnson first before we talk about Dominic Cummings, whose statement is just minutes ago. So what do you think about Boris Johnson's statement?
Well, I think firstly, Boris found himself in a situation where he was forced into making a statement. He obviously felt forced in. It wasn't supposed to be him doing that briefing at all. It was supposed to be Robert Jenrick was supposed to be doing that. So there was a last-minute switch. That always looks like panic. So one thing to think about when you're managing a crisis is make everything look managed and make yourself the center of attention and make yourself appear to be in control. And I think if I'd have been advising Boris, I'd have said, go ahead, let Robert Jenrick do the press conference. And if you want to make a special statement later on about the Cummings affair, do that, make it separately. To try and roll one into the other and look like they're thinking on their feet, I think was one of the first mistakes that Boris made.
So it's rather to be preferred that they first make everything look like they had a plan in mind, or how? Because it sounds very easy now, but when you are in the midst of a crisis, and of course, media crisis can happen to any brand, any major corporation out of the blue. We just in Germany we just had Volkswagen just recently with the Dieselgate scandal. So how do you make it look planned when you clearly have no plan?
Well, I mean, there are basic rules of crisis management. Obviously, I've dealt with a lot of organizations around the world and helped them manage their crisis and help them manage their communication. And there are three basic rules, and they were listed by a guy called Lanny Davis, who used to work for Bill Clinton back in the day, who had his own crises to cope with, as I'm sure many people will remember. And what Lanny said, he said, when you come to a crisis, tell it early, tell it all, and tell it yourself. And that's a really good mantra, to get out there early, to take control of the crisis, get all the facts on the table so that you're the person who has delivered all of the information, and make sure you're the person that's doing the delivery. Do not allow speculation to occur outside. And if you follow those three rules, all of which incidentally Boris broke, and so did Dominic Cummings, then you've got at least a decent chance of getting out of it in one piece.
So when the story now evolved and pressure was rising and rising, Dominic Cummings then, during, I think, this morning announced that he's going to make a press statement later during the day. There was no specific time given. So I was sitting all day waiting for this statement to happen, which is now just minutes ago, and the questions are now just finishing. So do you think that, so first, how do you judge Cummings' statement, and how do you think they managed the whole kind of setting it up, the statement, the setting, the time?
I think there are a number of things here. I mean, when you bear in mind that one of the major issues was that, right or wrong, Dominic Cummings appeared to have broken the lockdown rules. He appeared to have travelled when his wife had symptoms of coronavirus. He may well have had the disease, and the rule is stay at home, no exceptions. So he appeared to have done that. There's also a rule that applies to special advisors to government, and that is that they don't make public statements about political issues. That's Rule 14 of their Code of Conduct, incidentally.
Okay.
He broke that as well. Not only that, he broke it in number 10 Downing Street, in the Rose Garden, at the heart of government, where special advisors are not supposed to make public statements, let alone in that particular place. So what he's done is compounded one rule breaking or potential rule breaking with another. The idea of not giving people a time, of then turning up over half an hour late, that gives him the impression of him being in control. I think anyone who knows Dominic Cummings will know that if he's nothing else, he's a control freak. He wants to be in charge of everything. And therefore, he made people wait. He didn't tell them the time. And then when he did tell them the time at 4 o'clock, he decided to turn up half an hour late because he was in control. Unfortunately, it had the opposite effect. And it made him look out of control, and it made him look as though he wasn't sure what was going on.
Okay, so what in his that's of course one major problem now. Some people said they would like Dominic Cummings to have apologized for what he has done, no matter if he has broken the law or not. On the other hand, when you do your research, leading law firms would say when you apologize, you basically say that you've broken the law, and as soon as you apologize and admit that you've done something wrong, you must leave the position immediately because you admitted that you've broken the law or at least government guidelines. How to deal with that? Because not apologizing is not the right way. Apologizing, on the other hand, is not the right way. How to deal with it?
Well, there are two ways of looking at that, Niels. One is if you actually done something wrong, then you do need to apologize. You need to come out with your hands up. You say, I'm sorry I did that. And you need to say why it won't happen again. The other circumstance that we're in, or that Dominic Cummings was in, is that he does need to acknowledge and apologize to people who were upset. There are a lot of people made very, very angry by this. People who couldn't go to the funerals of their relatives. People who couldn't see relatives who were dying in hospital. They feel rightly very, very angry. He should have said, I'm sorry. I'm sorry that my actions made them feel angry. He can then justify his actions and say, I believe I was doing the right thing. That's a different matter. But he absolutely should have said sorry to those people. Not only did he not say sorry, he said he did not regret anything he did. I think that was, again, a poor piece of judgment, another poor piece of judgment, because he'd already admitted that he'd made journeys outside the place where he's supposed to be self-isolating. He put his hand up to that. He drove 30 miles to a castle. He went out walking in the woods. They stopped on the way back from the castle and had a little sort of frolic around somewhere. So he's admitted that he broke the rules. He doesn't regret it, and he doesn't apologise. And those were two big mistakes.
So that sounds like Boris Johnson and Dominic Cummings don't score very high marks from you.
No. On my crisis communication meter, it's down in the red, I've got to tell you.
Okay.
They've done very badly. However, of course, they are two of the most powerful people in the UK, and therefore they can get away with it for now. I think what will happen with these things is crises tend to chip away. Things gradually come out, more and more emerges, more pressure comes on, and as soon as they're seen to be doing more damage than benefit, then somebody will just tap them on the shoulder and say, excuse me, I think it's time you went.
When we look at this now, and many of our listeners come from the corporate world, some of them may now think, well, of course, without making a very clear statement which brands that might be, but some people will now think this could happen to us at any point in time, given when XYZ comes out.
Absolutely.
So when people now think, if I am in this situation and suddenly in the morning something happens and someone tells me in 2 or 3 hours I have to make a public statement, and press might be there, and maybe even press which is only looking for good headlines, and they are clearly, maybe when they are more from the yellow press side or from a boulevard kind of point of view, they're only looking for a good headline. What, to wrap this whole interview up, what were your top 3 tips to make it at least as good as possible, even when you've done something wrong?
Well, first thing is to call me. I mean, that goes without saying.
Of course.
Welcome to my life. This is what I do every day. But obviously, they should have a plan in place. Things are going to happen. Crises are going to occur. Some of them, interestingly, 70% of crises can be anticipated. You can see them coming. Only 30% are immediate. So in most cases, in the majority of cases, you can actually plan for something going wrong. You can have some planned statements in place, some planned procedures, some designated spokespeople who are available 24/7. So the first thing I would do is take your crisis plan out of the cupboard and make sure that it's been tested and put that into place. The second thing is to think, what are the facts of the case? What can I say that I need to say right now? That mantra I gave you a little while ago, Lanny Davis's mantra, tell it early, tell it all, tell it yourself. Follow that mantra. So get the facts together. And thirdly, make sure everyone in the organization who is liable to be contacted by the media, and that is not only the spokespeople, but also the people who might be coming into the office in the morning and might be doorstepped by a reporter with a microphone, make sure they know the party line. Make sure they know exactly what they can say and what they cannot say. And no comment is not a comment. People need to be able to say something. I mean, you can get away with referring it up and say, right, I'll get somebody more senior to talk to you. This is above my pay grade. But really, people in an organization at any level that are likely to bump into a reporter or be doorstepped by a reporter should know very quickly what the party line is.
Excellent. That is very good and also very specific advice. Of course, I'm going to put your contact data in the show notes here. So when people have maybe a problem or they see a problem coming, maybe it's now the time to contact Ellen directly, because you can see what happens if you did not really have a plan, but you pretend to have one. So let's hope it all goes well for our listeners. And for Ellen, for you, I can only say thank you very much for your time.
Niels, it's been a pleasure. May you never, ever have a crisis. Thank you very much.
Thank you.